Today's date is April 6, 2025. My name is Ethan Gronowatter. I'm a 7th grade student at Temple Israel of Westport, Connecticut. I'll be interviewing my father, whose name is
Neil Gronowatter.
Let's start with you telling me your full name.
Well, it's still Neil Edward Gronowatter.
Who were you named after, if you know?
I was named after my great-grandmother, my mother's grandmother, Nettie Feigenbaum.
Do you have a Hebrew name? What is it?
I do. It is Nadiv Yisrael ben Yitzchak Nachum.
Okay. In class, I've learned about the immigration of Jews to the U.S. and other places. Do you know where your parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents immigrated from?
On my mother's side, they came from Poland, Russia, and Belarus. On my father's side, they came from Austria.
Okay. Do you know anything about Jewish life there?
I know that for my mother's side that there were these thriving Jewish communities, but they lived, in ghettos where they were forced to live. The Jews lived among themselves, and they were restricted from having full participation in different jobs or different careers, and they were also forcibly conscripted in the army, and they left because of anti-Semitism, because of pogroms, from riots from the locals that was encouraged by the government at the time.
Was anyone in the family directly affected by the Holocaust in Europe or by pogroms in Russia, Poland, or elsewhere? What can you tell me about it?
So nobody we know was directly impacted by the pogroms. Interestingly enough, there's a famous story of this ship called the St. Louis that left Germany in 1939 with over 1,000 Jews, and the Nazis sent that ship to go to the West, knowing that none of the Western countries would willingly accept all these Jews. And one of the people who was on that ship was someone named Edward Gronowatter. So he is a distant cousin, and he somehow survived from that. So, but nobody I know was fortunately directly impacted by the Holocaust or the pogroms other than what I just described.
Okay. Can you tell me anything about our family's immigration to the United States? Who came over? When?
Well, my great-grandmother, Nettie Feigenbaum, came over when she was about 5 in the early 1900s, between 1903 and 1905. My mother's father's mother, so my maternal great-grandmother, Ita, came over here when she was a preteen or teenager. And there's a famous story in our family that when she went for citizenship before the judge in an American courtroom, the judge was sitting with portraits of Abraham Lincoln over his left shoulder and George Washington over his right shoulder. And he asked Ita, who is the man over my left shoulder who is Abe Lincoln? And she said, Abraham Lincoln, because she saw his name in print and pronounced the second L. And then when he pointed to George Washington, he said, who is that? And she said, his wife, because he kind of looked like a woman with the long hair. And everybody in the courtroom laughed, and she was embarrassed, and the judge felt so bad that he still approved her for citizenship.
Do you know why they left?
Well, they left because of religious persecution. I know on my mother and father's side that apparently, at least my mother's side, that there was a lot of anti-Semitism where they lived, and they were literally afraid for their lives. And for my father's side in Austria, I believe that it was more to have a better life, a better economic life. Even though there was anti-Semitism, there was not as brutal as it was in Russia, Poland, and Belarus at the time.
Where did they enter the country?
They entered, I believe, all through Ellis Island.
Okay. Where did they first settle?
They all settled in New York. So they all settled actually in Brooklyn and Queens, not Manhattan, for New York City.
What is this artifact? Tell me about it.
Sure. So if we look at this menorah, so this was lit on my maternal grandmother's side, and this menorah is, this Hanukkah menorah is well over 100 years old. And I actually had it appraised, and I thought it might be worth a lot of money, but it turned out that this type of menorah was mass-produced, and so even though it has sentimental value, it's only worth maybe $100 or $200.
Do you know where it came from?
It was, I believe these were, it doesn't say where it was manufactured. There's no made-in stamp, but I believe that these were manufactured in the United States when there were, it was a much larger infrastructure for manufacturing metal goods like this.
Okay. Do you know how old it is?
Yeah, it's about 100 years old. They were manufactured, mass-produced in the 1920s and 30s.
Please tell me about this family photograph.
Well, you'll have to pause it and then we'll...
What is this artifact? Tell me about it.
Sure. So this photo is a class photo. It's obviously a copy of a copy, since you can see that it's cut off here. It's a photo of the junior high school my grandfather attended, and it appears to be an all-boys school, in 1920. My grandpa was born in 1910, and this is him. So, right there.
Which one?
Right there, that's him. So he was 10 years old at the time. He was born April 28th.
This?
Yeah, you just, no, that guy right there, yep. April 28th, 1910. And you, Ethan, your oldest brother, Elon, your only brother, Elon's middle name is Hayden, named after my grandpa, Harry. So this was taken when he was 10 years old, some all-boys, it looks like an all-boys school. And my grandpa...
So, do you have a family photograph?
Yes.
Please tell me about this photograph. When and where was it taken?
So this photo was taken in 1920. We know that because it says graduates of this junior high school, 1920. And my grandfather was 10 years old at the time. And this is him right here. That was Harry Litt. He was born in 1910, April 28th. Yep, that's him right there. And this might have been a school for orphans. And the reason I say that is because when he was 4 years old, his father, who was supposed to be a very strong, nice man, was in a bar and on a bet lifted a beer keg over his head. And the story goes that his chest ruptured and he had a massive heart attack where it tore his chest and he died on the spot. And his mother, Ida, or Ita, couldn't take care of him and he was in an orphanage. And so this may have been the school for orphans or an all-boys school that he attended.
Okay. Where did you grow up and who lived with you growing up?
So I grew up first in Far Rockaway, Queens, until I was about 4. And then we moved to an apartment building in Woodmere in the 5 towns of South Shore of Long Island. It was my mother, my father, my sister who was 3 years younger, Jody, and me. And my parents got divorced a couple of years later, but my mother, sister, and I all lived in that same 2-bedroom apartment.
When you were a teenager, did you have a
Ethan,
bar-
are you? Is this? Are you?
if when you were a teenager, did you have a bar mitzvah?
I absolutely did. Yes.
If what was the most meaningful to you? What was the most meaningful thing to you about it?
Most meaningful thing about the bar mitzvah? Well, I enjoyed, reading from the Torah and giving a speech. I remember that my parashah, my chapter was Noah, which is the second chapter of the Torah, which is one after yours, Ethan. Yours is Bereshit. You're lucky it's the first chapter. So I enjoyed the service, and I also enjoyed celebrating with different family members who I don't get to see all the time.
Okay. What was your favorite Jewish holiday, and how did you and your family celebrate it as a child when you were a child?
My favorite Jewish holiday. Well, I liked lighting the menorah, lighting the candles for Hanukkah. We really didn't get much of the way of presents. My family wasn't really, comfortable by any standard, but that was still a nice holiday. And also Passover, doing the Seders with my family was also nice.
Okay. Now I would like to talk about our family Jewish traditions. What are your favorite Jewish traditions?
Well, for our family, I like the fact that we light the Shabbat candles every Friday night. I like celebrating Passover in our home, our family. That's something I enjoy. And also lighting the Hanukkah menorah and giving presents to my children.
Okay. Did anyone in your family serve in the military?
My Uncle Archie, my Grandma Edna's brother, was in the Army in the Korean War, but he didn't actually see active service. He was in an Army base here in America. I don't know which one. And also, my cousin Jeffrey did serve in the Vietnam War.
Okay. How did you meet my grandma or how did you meet my mother?
So that's a great story. 3 weeks before September 11th, 9/11/2001, she went with a friend to B.B. King's, which was a blues and music club, and so did I with two of my friends separately. And we were there to see a swing band called Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. And at the end of the musical concert, they played a song that was from the movie Swingers, where they appeared. Dean Martin's You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You. And I was desperately looking for somebody to dance with. I had my two-tone shoes on, and I had taken 6 months of swing dance classes a year or two before. And I did one lap around, and there was nobody to dance with, and I turned to my best friend at the time, Ellie Jacobs, who I went to Israel with in 1988 with a Jewish youth group called USY. And I turned to him and I said, Ellie, there's nobody to dance with. And he puts his hand on my shoulder. He's 6'4", 240 pounds, very deep voice, and says, "You got to find someone to dance with, bro. It's a target-rich environment." I said, okay. I did one more lap and found Ethan's mom standing there between two of her friends. I extended my hand. I said, "Come dance with me." She did, and the rest is history. And we've been together now for going on 24 years.
Okay. What did you do to make a living in your adult life?
Well, I'm actually now on my third and final career. I practiced law for a decade. Didn't really like that. I also worked at the Bronx DA's office as a prosecutor. I then was in commercial real estate brokerage, and then I pivoted to being a financial advisor, which I'm doing well now, and running my own company.
Okay, now we're going to wrap up with one more question. What advice do you have for future generations like me?
I'd say education is important. It's important to be proud of being Jewish, of having a connection with the Jewish people and Israel, and being part of a Jewish community, like a synagogue, and also being active in Jewish pro-Israel causes and seeking out information that is credible, that portrays Israel in the correct light, because there's a lot of nonsense and bad information that's misleading a lot of well-intentioned people.
Okay, we're done.